The council chamber on Zenthar Prime had seen many arguments over the years, but none quite like this one. Ambassador Lisa Crawford stood before the curved table where 12 alien representatives sat, their various forms shifting with obvious frustration. The holographic display behind her showed the grim reality of Sigma-7, a mining colony that had become a tomb for 73 souls. 3 attempts. Council leader Vex Thor clicked through his translator, his insect-like mandibles moving rapidly. 3 failures. Your human forces could not help us before. What makes you think they can help now? Lisa kept her face calm. She had learned that lesson in her first month among the stars. Show fear or anger, and they would dismiss you. Show patience, and they might listen. I'm not suggesting our regular military forces, Council Leader, she said. I'm suggesting we use operators you haven't met yet. High Admiral Krenval ruffled his feathers, the avian commander's yellow eyes narrowing. Operators. What does this word mean? We have studied your military structure. We know of your soldiers, your pilots, your Marines. What new trick is this? Lisa touched her datapad, and the display changed. Images flickered across the screen. Old footage from Earth's history. Grainy videos showed humans moving through darkness, entering buildings, extracting people from impossible situations. Much of the footage was blurred, faces hidden, details removed. We call them special forces, Lisa said quietly. On Earth, we've had them for hundreds of years. They train for missions that would kill anyone else. They go where no one else can go. They do what no one else can do. A mammalian council member named Shentok leaned forward, his fur rippling. If your regular soldiers are not enough, how can these be better? This makes no sense. Because they're not regular soldiers, Lisa explained. They volunteer for training that breaks most humans who try it. Only 10% make it through. Those who succeed spend years learning to operate in complete silence. They master languages, weapons, tactics. They become invisible. They become patient. They become the people you send when everyone else has failed. Vex's Thor made a sound that the translator struggled to interpret. Invisible? Patience? The hostages are dying. The terrorists have demands. We need force, not shadows. Force failed 3 times, Lisa said simply. The Crimson Void is ready for force. They're not ready for shadows. The council chamber fell silent. On the display, a new image appeared. It showed the colony from orbit, highlighting the complex tunnel system, the defensive positions, the places where hostages were held. Red marks indicated where galactic troops had tried to enter and failed. Admiral Krenval studied the display with professional interest. Even if these special forces exist, how would they succeed? The terrorists have every entrance covered. They have hostages spread across 3 different locations. They have weapons that can collapse the tunnels. Any assault would kill the people we're trying to save. Which is why you don't assault, Lisa said. You infiltrate. You wait. You study. You move when they don't expect it. You strike where they aren't looking. Special Forces operators don't fight fair battles, Admiral. They fight smart battles. This sounds like fantasy, Shentok muttered. Stories to make humans seem more dangerous than they are. Chantok, Lisa allowed herself a small smile. Then you have nothing to lose by letting them try. If they fail, you can add it to your list of human shortcomings. If they succeed, 73 people go home alive. Vex Thor's mandibles clicked in what might have been thought. The room waited. Finally, he spoke. How long would they need? They'll tell you when they're ready to move, Lisa answered. That is not acceptable. We must coordinate with our military forces. We must have communication protocols. We must have oversight. Lisa shook her head slowly. No, Council Leader. You must give them the mission and let them work. Special Forces operators don't function well with committees watching them. They function best when you trust them to do their job. Trust? Admiral Krenval's feathers ruffled again. We don't even know these humans exist. You show us blurry videos and tell us to trust mystery soldiers. This is not military procedure. It's not your military procedure, Lisa agreed. It's ours. And right now, yours isn't working. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Vexthor was silent for a long moment. If we agree to this, he said finally, and your special forces fail, humanity's reputation in this council will suffer greatly. If we don't try, Lisa countered, and more hostages die, this council's reputation will suffer greatly. Another silence. Then Vexthor made a sharp gesture. Bring them. We will watch. If they fail, we will remember this. Lisa nodded. Fair enough. The council session ended. Lisa walked out of the chamber and immediately contacted Earth. The message was simple and used codes that most of the galaxy couldn't break. Package authorized. 6 operators. Priority 1. The response came back in less than 5 minutes. En route. ETA 36 hours. Lisa spent those 36 hours preparing. She gathered intelligence reports, building layouts, everything the operators would need. She ignored the curious questions from council members who wanted to know more about these mysterious soldiers. She ignored the skeptical looks from Admiral Krenval's staff. She focused on the mission. When the ship arrived, it was unmarked. No flags, no insignia, nothing to identify it as human or military. It docked at a private bay that Lisa had secured. She went alone to meet them. 6 humans stepped off the ship. They wore simple dark clothes, not uniforms. They carried bags that probably held more equipment than most soldiers could imagine. The man in front was tall but not unusually so. His face was weathered, his eyes calm. He looked like he could be anyone. Which was probably the point. Commander Jack Monroe, he said quietly. I am. Thank you for coming. Brief us. Lisa handed him a data drive. Everything we have. Layouts. Guard rotations. Hostage locations. Terrorist capabilities. The council wants updates. They want oversight. They'll get results, Monroe interrupted gently. That's all they need. They'll get result. Indicated. He looked at the 5 operators behind him. They didn't speak, but something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Agreement. Lisa had seen military teams before, but this was different. These 6 moved like they shared one mind. The council is watching from an observation post, Lisa said. High Admiral Krenval will be monitoring. Monroe nodded. Good. They'll learn something. Should I tell them your plan? No plan yet, Monroe said. We'll study the situation first. We'll find the opening. We'll move when it's right. The hostages don't have much time. Monroe's eyes met hers, and Lisa saw something there that made her believe. Determination. Certainty. The look of someone who had done impossible things before and knew he could do them again. They have enough time, he said. Trust us, Ambassador. Then the 6 operators picked up their bags and walked toward the transport that would take them to the staging area. Lisa watched them go. These shadows that her species had created. And she thought about Vexthor's words. Trust. She did. She really did. Now the galaxy would see why. High Admiral Krenval adjusted the display for the 3rd time in an hour. The observation post overlooked the mining colony from a safe distance, every sensor trained on the complex below. Somewhere down there, 6 human operators were beginning their mission. Somewhere down there, 73 hostages waited for rescue or death. Still no signal from the human team, his aide reported. Check the tracking devices again, Krenval ordered. I have, Admiral. All 6 signals disappeared 14 minutes after deployment. We lost them completely. Krenval's feathers ruffled with frustration. The humans had agreed to carry standard tracking devices. Those devices were military grade, designed to work through rock, metal, and interference. Nothing should have blocked them. They removed the devices, he concluded. Or disabled them somehow, the aide suggested. Should we contact Ambassador Crawford? Krenval considered this. He could complain. He could demand answers. But the ambassador had been clear about one thing. Special Forces operators worked alone. They didn't check in. They didn't provide updates. They delivered results. No, he said finally. We wait. We watch. So they watched. Hours passed. The sensors showed the Crimson Void terrorists moving through their patrol patterns. They showed the hostages in their holding areas, bound and guarded. They showed the deadly efficiency of a group that had planned this attack for months. But they showed no sign of the human team. This is impossible, Krenval muttered after 6 hours. They must be somewhere. Our sensors can detect a heartbeat through solid rock. Where are they? His aide had no answer. Below them, Commander Monroe and his team had indeed disappeared. They had entered the colony through a maintenance tunnel that the galactic military had dismissed as too small. They had sealed themselves inside spaces that the terrorists never checked. They had slowed their breathing, controlled their heart rates, and become something less than alive to the sensors that swept past them. Lieutenant Ryan Foster lay in a crawl space barely wider than his shoulders. He had been there for 4 hours. His muscles ached. His joints screamed for movement. He ignored them all. Instead, he studied the corridor below through a microscopic crack in the floor panel. He counted footsteps. He timed patrol patterns. He noted which guards were alert and which were bored. North corridor clear for 30-second intervals, he whispered into his throat mic. The signal was so focused that only his team could hear it. 3 guards, rotating every 12 minutes. In another part of the colony, Sergeant Nicole Barrett had accessed a computer terminal. Not by breaking into a room. Not by hacking a door. By simply waiting in a locked maintenance closet until a terrorist technician opened it for tools. The technician never saw her. He grabbed what he needed and left. Nicole waited 5 more hours before moving to the terminal. Her fingers moved across the keys with practiced ease. She didn't try to take control of the systems. That would trigger alarms. Instead, she read, she learned, she found the security protocols, the sensor layouts, the communication channels. She discovered where each hostage group was held. She identified which terrorists were leaders and which were followers. 3 holding areas confirmed, she whispered. Primary group has 42 hostages, including 16 children. Secondary has 21 adults. Tertiary has 10, all wounded from the initial attack. Corporal Brandon Lee heard the report and adjusted his position slightly. He was closer to the primary holding area than anyone else. He could see the children through a vent opening. They sat against a wall, guarded by 5 armed terrorists. Some of the children cried softly. Others stared at nothing. Faces blank with fear. Brandon had 3 children of his own back on Earth. Looking at these kids made his chest tight. But he pushed the feeling down. Emotion came later. Right now, there was only the mission. He studied the guards. 1 was nervous, hand constantly on his weapon. 2 were confident, probably veterans. The other 2 looked bored. Brandon noted this. Bored guards made mistakes. Specialist Megan Torres had found her position on a high point overlooking the main entrance. Getting there had taken her 8 hours of patient climbing through shafts and tunnels. Now she lay flat on a narrow beam, her rifle resting on a support that she had carefully padded to prevent sound. Through her scope, she could see almost the entire main level. She identified targets. She calculated ranges. She noted sight lines and cover positions. Her rifle was calibrated for the colony's gravity, temperature, and atmospheric pressure. Every variable was known. Every shot was possible. Overwatch in position, she whispered. I count 42 hostiles in view. More in the lower levels. Specialist Kevin Drake was closest to the terrorist command center. He had spent 6 hours moving through ventilation shafts that were never designed for someone his size. He had squeezed through gaps that scraped skin off his shoulders. He had endured absolute darkness and stale air. Now he waited 20 meters from where the terrorist leader, Thazgul, coordinated the operation. Kevin could hear voices through the thin wall. Thazgul was arguing with someone about their demands. The Galactic Council wasn't responding fast enough. The prisoners weren't valuable enough. Maybe they needed to execute a few more to make their point. Kevin's hand tightened on his weapon. Not yet. Monroe hadn't given the signal. They needed more information. More preparation. More patience. Commander Monroe himself was tracking Thazgul through the colony's corridors. The terrorist leader was careful, always surrounded by guards, always aware. But Monroe had learned patience in places that would break most minds. He had waited in worse conditions for longer periods. He could wait here. He followed Thazgul through 3 levels, staying in the shadows, moving when others moved, freezing when others stopped. Once, a guard walked within half a meter of Monroe's position. The guard never looked down, never noticed the human operator pressed against the wall in a gap too small to see. Back in the observation post, Admiral Krenval was losing patience. 20 hours, he said to his aide. 20 hours. With no sign of these special forces. No communication. No movement. Nothing. Perhaps they're still gathering intelligence, Admiral. For 20 hours? What intelligence takes 20 hours to gather? We gave them all our data. We provided layouts. What more do they need? He didn't understand. His people were fast. They were efficient. They moved quickly and struck hard. This waiting, this silence, it made no sense to him. Ambassador Crawford arrived at the observation post carrying coffee, real Earth coffee, shipped across the galaxy at great expense. She offered a cup to Krenval. Any updates? She asked calmly. None. Your operators have vanished completely. If I didn't trust you, Ambassador, I would think they had abandoned the mission. Lisa sipped her coffee. They haven't abandoned anything, Admiral. They're doing what they do best. Which is what? Hiding? Learning. Special Forces operators don't rush into situations. They study them. They find every weakness, every opening, every opportunity. When they finally move, it's because they know exactly what will happen. Krenval made a sound of frustration. More hostages could die while they study. More hostages will definitely die if they move too soon, Lisa countered. Trust the process, Admiral. These operators have done this before. They know what they're doing. Another 6 hours passed. In the colony below, the 6 human operators had become part of the structure itself. They had mapped every corridor in their assigned zones. They knew which guards were alert and which were tired. They knew when patrols changed and where the gaps in coverage existed. Monroe had been within arm's reach of Thazgul for the past hour. The terrorist leader stood in the command center, studying reports from his people. He had no idea that death waited in the shadows behind him. No idea that if Monroe chose, he could end this entire situation in seconds. But Monroe didn't choose. Not yet. The mission wasn't about killing Thazgul. It was about saving 73 people. Killing the leader too soon might trigger panic. Panic might get hostages killed. So Monroe waited. He watched. He learned. Finally, after 30 hours in position, Monroe spoke into his mic. All stations. Report readiness. One by one, his team responded. North corridor mapped. Charges placed. Ready. Security systems compromised. Ready. Primary holding area confirmed. Ready. Overwatch set. All targets identified. Ready. Close assault position achieved. Ready. Monroe took a slow breath. 30 hours of waiting. 30 hours of complete stillness. Now came the moment that all that patience had built toward. Mission go at 0347 local time, he said quietly. Countdown begins in 60 seconds. Sound off if you cannot make position. Silence. Everyone was ready. Monroe checked his watch. 55 seconds. He thought about the children in the holding area. About the wounded in the tertiary location. About the families waiting for news. About the council members who doubted that this could work. 30 seconds. He thought about the training. The years of preparation. The missions that had taught him how to do impossible things. The brothers and sisters in arms who had taught him to be patient, to be precise, to be invisible when needed and devastating when required. 10 seconds. In the observation post, Admiral Krenval suddenly sat up straight. Admiral? His aide asked. Something's happening. I don't know what, but something is about to happen. Lisa Crawford smiled slightly. Yes, she said. It is. 0. The lights died at exactly 0347 local time. Every light in the colony, every display, every backup system. Total darkness fell like a curtain. In the observation post, Admiral Krenval watched his sensors go wild as Nicole's carefully planted virus shut down power systems across the entire facility. What just happened? He demanded. Emergency power should engage in 30 seconds, his aide said, checking readouts frantically. Those 30 seconds felt like an eternity. In the darkness below, 6 human operators moved like water through stone. They had memorized every step, every turn, every obstacle. They didn't need light. They had spent the past 30 hours learning to navigate blind. Ryan's explosives detonated in sequence. Small charges, precisely placed, designed not to destroy but to confuse. One went off in the north corridor, far from any hostages. Another in the south storage area. A third in the eastern processing center. Each explosion was loud enough to hear, but small enough to cause no real damage. The terrorists reacted exactly as expected. They panicked. Guards left their posts, running toward the sounds. Communications filled with confused shouting. Orders contradicted other orders. In the chaos, gaps opened in their defensive positions, gaps that the human team flowed through like smoke. Kevin reached the command center before the emergency lights came on. He moved through the door while 2 guards were running out to investigate the explosions. He saw Thazgul reaching for a weapon, saw the terrorist leader's eyes widening in surprise at the dark figure that appeared from nowhere. Kevin's strike was precise. Non-lethal, but absolutely effective. Thazgul dropped without making a sound. The 2 remaining guards in the room turned. But Kevin was already moving. 3 seconds later, both guards were unconscious on the floor. Kevin secured Thazgul with restraints strong enough to hold a gorilla and moved to the next target. Command center secure, he reported calmly. Brandon reached the primary holding area as the emergency lights flickered on. The guards were distracted by the explosions, looking away from their prisoners. Brandon moved with speed that seemed impossible for someone his size. The first guard went down without realizing anyone was behind him. The second turned and saw Brandon's face for half a second before darkness took him. The children screamed. They had just seen a stranger appear from nowhere and take down 2 armed guards in complete silence. Brandon held up his hands, making himself look smaller, less threatening. "I'm here to help," he said in a gentle voice. He switched languages, repeating the phrase in a dozen different ways. "You're safe now. I'm going to get you out." A small child, no more than 6 years old and covered in blue fur, stared at him with huge eyes. "Are you a soldier?" "Something like that," Brandon said with a smile. He moved to the restraints holding the hostages and began cutting them free. "Stay quiet. Stay close. We're leaving very soon." In the secondary holding area, Megan provided cover from her elevated position. Through her scope, she saw 3 terrorists running toward the hostage location. They were responding to a silent alarm that the guards had triggered before Brandon took them down. Megan's rifle made 3 soft sounds, barely louder than someone clearing their throat. The 3 terrorists dropped instantly. "Secondary approach clear," she reported. Moving to next position, Monroe moved through the corridors like he owned them. He had spent 30 hours learning every detail of this place. Now he used that knowledge. A terrorist ran past him, never noticing the shadow that pressed into an alcove. Another stopped to check a corner, never looking up to where Monroe clung to pipes on the ceiling. He reached the tertiary holding area and found 10 wounded hostages, guarded by 3 terrorists, who looked nervous. These guards knew something was wrong: the explosions, the communications breakdown, the reports of guards going silent. They raised their weapons as Monroe approached. "Drop them," Monroe said quietly. His weapon was pointed at the nearest guard. But his eyes were on all 3. "You can't win this. Your leader is captured. Your forces are broken. Drop the weapons and you live. The guard in the middle made the mistake of thinking he could take the shot. Monroe moved before the guard's finger finished pulling the trigger. The shot went wide. Monroe didn't shoot back. Instead, he closed the distance in 2 steps and disarmed all 3 guards with movements that looked simple but had taken years to perfect. Smart choice, Monroe said, as the guards raised their hands in surrender. He secured them with restraints and turned to the wounded hostages. Medical help is coming. Stay calm. Who are you? One of the wounded asked, her voice weak. Just someone who doesn't like terrorists, Monroe replied. Ryan moved through the lower levels, clearing rooms with systematic precision. Every terrorist he encountered went down fast. Some he knocked unconscious. Some he restrained. None of them got the chance to raise an alarm or fire a shot. His movements were efficient, trained through thousands of hours of practice. Lower levels clear. 14 hostiles secured. No casualties. Nicole had taken control of the security center. She rerouted communications, locked doors remotely, and guided her team through the facility using the cameras she now commanded. When a group of 5 terrorists tried to organize a counterattack, she sealed them in a storage room and moved on. 20 hostiles contained in Sector 3. They're not going anywhere. The operation moved like clockwork. Each team member knew their role. Each movement was planned. Each action supported the others. Admiral Krenval watched from the observation post with his mouth open as sensor data showed the situation changing by the second. Impossible, he whispered. This is impossible. No, Ambassador Crawford said, her voice filled with quiet pride. This is Special Forces. The emergency power had been on for 4 minutes when Brandon started moving the hostages toward the extraction point. The children held hands in a line, following him through corridors that should have been crawling with terrorists. But the terrorists were all down, or contained, or too confused to organize resistance. A small boy near the back of the line tugged on Brandon's sleeve. Mister, are you a superhero? Brandon laughed softly. No, kid. I'm just a soldier who practiced a lot. Kevin had secured the command center and was now broadcasting a message to every terrorist still active in the facility. His voice was calm but carried absolute authority. This is over. Your leader is captured. Your positions are compromised. Surrender now and you'll face trial. Resist and you'll face us. Choose wisely. Several groups of terrorists chose to surrender. Others tried to fight. Those who fought learned quickly why humans had developed special forces in the first place. Megan's rifle spoke quietly but effectively from her overwatch position. Ryan's demolitions expertise closed off escape routes. Nicole's control of security systems trapped groups in rooms they couldn't exit. Monroe coordinated it all with calm precision. He directed his team with minimal words, trusting them to understand. When a terrorist sniper tried to target the escaping hostages, Monroe was already moving. He reached the sniper's position before the shot was fired and removed the threat with professional efficiency. All hostages moving to extraction, he reported. Primary and secondary groups are clear. Tertiary group needs medical support. Have the Galactic forces ready to receive wounded. In the observation post, Admiral Krenval finally found his voice. All units. Move in. Support the extraction. Medical teams to Landing Bay 3. Security forces secure the perimeter. His aides stared at the sensor displays. Admiral. The mission is essentially complete. The humans have done everything. Then we'll help with the aftermath, Krenval said firmly. Move. The extraction took 8 more minutes. Brandon led the children to safety, speaking to them constantly in their various languages, keeping them calm. Kevin escorted the secondary hostage group, his presence alone enough to make them feel secure. Monroe personally carried 2 of the wounded from the tertiary location, moving with care despite his speed. Megan provided overwatch until every hostage was clear, her scope sweeping for threats that never materialized. Ryan and Nicole were the last to leave, making sure every secured terrorist was properly restrained for Galactic authorities. When Monroe finally stepped into the landing bay where the hostages were being treated, he looked completely calm. His team gathered around him, checking in with quiet words and subtle gestures. To an outside observer, They looked like they had just finished a training exercise, not the most complex hostage rescue in galactic history. Admiral Krenval approached them, his feathers still ruffled with agitation. "Commander Monroe. That was remarkable. I have never seen anything like that in 30 years of military service." Monroe nodded once. "Thank you, Admiral. Glad we could help. How did you coordinate so precisely? Your communications were impossible to detect. Your movements were invisible to our sensors. Your timing was perfect. How?" "Training," Monroe said simply. "And trust. We've worked together for years. We know what each other will do before we do it. But the darkness, the chaos, the speed. How do you practice for situations like that?" Monroe looked at his team, then back at the Admiral. "We train for worse situations, Admiral. We prepare for scenarios where everything goes wrong. When something goes right, it feels easy." Krenval shook his head slowly. "I owe you an apology, Commander. I doubted that you could succeed. I was wrong." "Doubt is understandable," Monroe replied. "Results are what matter. 73 people are alive. That's all we needed to accomplish." Lisa Crawford joined them, unable to hide her smile. "Any casualties?" "None among the hostages," Monroe reported. "No fatalities among the terrorists, though several will need medical attention. Thasgul is secured and ready for trial." "The mission time?" Monroe checked his watch. 11 minutes from first explosion to last extraction. Plus 30 hours of preparation." Lisa nodded. "The Council wants to speak with you." "Later," Monroe said. "Right now, my team needs food, rest, and debriefing. The Council can wait." Admiral Krenval started to object, then stopped himself. These humans had just done the impossible. They had earned the right to set their own schedule. "Of course," he said. "Take all the time you need." Monroe and his team walked away toward their ship. They moved together, a unit that functioned as one. The galaxy had just witnessed something new. Something powerful. Something that would change everything about how they viewed humanity. They had seen the shadows strike. And those shadows had proven unstoppable. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours, every species knew about the humans and their special forces. Within days, everyone wanted to know more. Within weeks, the questions became demands. Lixara was a journalist for one of the galaxy's largest news networks. Her reptilian species valued truth above all else, and she pursued stories with relentless determination. The moment she heard about Sigma-7, she knew this was something important. Something that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity. She started by requesting an interview with Commander Monroe. The request was denied. She tried to contact the other 5 operators. Denied again. She reached out to Earth's military command. They politely told her that Special Forces personnel did not give interviews. So Lixara did what good journalists do. She dug deeper. She found old Earth records, documents that humans had uploaded to galactic databases when they joined the interstellar community. Military histories, training manuals, news articles from Earth's past. The more she read, the more she understood that Sigma-7 wasn't remarkable because it was new. It was remarkable because it was normal. "They've been doing this for centuries," she told her producer, her scaled hands gesturing at the screen filled with information. "Look at this. Earth history is full of operations like Sigma-7, hostage rescues, counter-terrorism missions, infiltrations behind enemy lines. They've perfected the art of small team operations, while the rest of us were still thinking in terms of large armies." Her producer, a cautious mammalian named Grell, studied the data. "This can't be accurate. These success rates are too high. No one achieves 90% success in hostage rescue operations. Human special forces do," Lixara said. "Because they don't count missions that they can't win. If something is truly impossible, they don't attempt it. They only move when they know they can succeed. That's just intelligent planning. No, it's more than that. It's patience combined with capability. It's knowing your limits and working within them. Most species in the galaxy respond to threats with force. Humans developed these operators to respond with precision. Lixera requested an interview with Ambassador Crawford. To her surprise, this request was approved. They met in a quiet office on Zenthar Prime, far from the council chambers where ambassadors usually worked. "Thank you for seeing me," Lixera began, setting up her recording equipment. Lisa smiled. "You're persistent. I respect that. What do you want to know?" "Everything. The galaxy is talking about your special forces, but no one really knows what they are. People are scared, Ambassador. They're asking questions that need answers." "Scared?" Lisa raised an eyebrow. "Of operators who just saved 73 lives without killing anyone unnecessarily?" "Scared? Scared of what else these operators can do," Lixara clarified. "If 6 humans can infiltrate a fortified position that hundreds of galactic troops couldn't breach, what could they do if they wanted to cause harm instead of prevent it?" Lisa was silent for a moment, considering her words carefully. "That's a fair question. Let me tell you about how someone becomes a special forces operator on Earth." She pulled up a display showing statistics that made Lixara's eyes widen. First, they volunteer. No one is forced into special forces. Then they face selection. Depending on the unit, only 5 to 15% of candidates make it through. The selection process is designed to break people physically and mentally. It tests their limits in ways that most beings can't imagine. "Why so harsh?" Lixara asked. "Because the missions are harsher," Lisa replied. "If you can't handle the training, you definitely can't handle being outnumbered 50 to 1 in hostile territory with hostages depending on you. The selection process finds the people who can keep thinking clearly when everything goes wrong. And, after selection, years of training. Language skills, cultural studies, advanced combat techniques, medical training, survival skills. Special forces operators are expected to function in any environment against any threat. They learn to be teachers, diplomats, warriors, and healers. All of it, all at once." Lixara made notes on her pad. "The galaxy is saying that these operators are weapons. Are they?" Lisa shook her head firmly. "No. They're people. Highly trained, extremely capable people who chose to serve. They're not weapons. They're professionals who understand that violence is sometimes necessary, but should always be the last option." "Can you prove that?" "Look at Sigma 7, Lisa said. "Monroe's team could have killed every terrorist in that facility. It would have been easier than the non-lethal approach they chose. But they didn't. They neutralized threats. They captured the leadership alive. They prioritized hostage safety over everything else. That's not how weapons behave. That's how professional soldiers behave. A very hostage, and the flues." The interview continued for 2 hours. When it aired across the galaxy, it became the most watched program of the year. People saw Ambassador Crawford's calm explanations. They heard about the training, the selection, the commitment required. But they also heard the part where Lisa revealed something that shocked the entire galaxy. "How many of these special forces operators does Earth have?" Lixara had asked. Lisa had smiled slightly. "Enough. That's not an answer, Ambassador. It's the only answer I can give. But I will say this. Every major nation on Earth has special forces units. Some are larger than others. Some specialize in different types of operations. But collectively, we have hundreds of operators trained to the level you saw at Sigma 7. The galaxy processed this information with varying reactions. Some species saw it as reassuring. Others saw it as threatening. The Galactic Council held emergency sessions to discuss the implications. Council member Shentok was among those who wanted restrictions. He stood before the council with data charts and arguments prepared. "We must require Earth to register all Special Forces personnel," he insisted. "We must have oversight of their operations. We must ensure they're not being used for purposes that threaten galactic security." Ambassador Crawford was present for this session. She listened to Shentok's arguments with patience, then stood to respond. "Earth will not register our Special Forces operators," she said clearly. "We will not provide lists of their names, their capabilities, or their locations. These operators work in the shadows, because that's where they're most effective. Exposing them would compromise their ability to help when needed. That is unacceptable, Shentok argued. How can we trust humans with such power if we don't know who holds it? Vexthor, who had been silent through most of the debate, finally spoke. His mandibles clicked thoughtfully as he addressed the council. I was skeptical of these human operators. I dismissed them as fantasy. Then I watched them accomplish what 3 attempts by our own forces could not. I watched them save 73 lives in 11 minutes. I watched them show restraint and precision that I have never seen in my career. Quote, he turned to face Shentok directly. You ask how we can trust them. I ask how we can afford not to. The galaxy is large. Threats exist that our conventional forces cannot always handle. Having operators who can solve these problems should be viewed as an asset, not a threat. Admiral Krenval added his support. I have reviewed the Sigma-7 operation dozens of times. Every decision the human team made was correct. Every action was justified. Every outcome was optimal. If all military forces operated with such professionalism, the galaxy would be safer, Shentok persisted. But what if these operators are used for conquest? What if Earth decides to use them offensively? Lisa addressed this directly. If Earth wanted conquest, we wouldn't need special forces. We would use our regular military, which is substantial. Special forces exist for specific missions. Hostage rescue. Counter-terrorism. Operations that require precision over power. They're not designed for invasion. They're designed for protection. Captain Amanda Price, a human military liaison, provided additional context. She brought details about Earth's history with special forces, explaining how they had been used throughout centuries. Our operators have served in every major conflict, she told the council. But their primary missions have always been defensive. Protecting civilians, rescuing hostages, preventing terrorist attacks. Yes, they can eliminate threats when necessary. But that's not their preferred outcome. At Sigma-7, they had 42 opportunities to use lethal force. They chose non-lethal options in 38 of those cases. Why the restraint? A council member asked. Because that's what we train them to do, Amanda replied. Anyone can kill. It takes real skill to neutralize a threat without killing. It takes judgment to know when lethal force is necessary and when it's not. That judgment is what makes our operators special. The debate continued for days. Finally, the council reached a decision. Earth would not be required to register Special Forces personnel. However, Earth agreed to provide general information about Special Forces capabilities and training standards. It was a compromise that satisfied most parties. Lixara secured one more interview that would define the entire conversation. She managed to speak with Commander Monroe himself. The interview took place in a secure location, with Monroe's face partially obscured to protect his identity. People are afraid of what you can do, Lixara said bluntly. Monroe's response was measured. Fear is natural. We represent something unknown to most of the galaxy. But fear should be directed at actual threats, not at people trying to help. Some say your weapons trained to look human. We're humans trained to protect others, Monroe corrected. There's a difference. Weapons don't think. Weapons don't feel. Weapons don't care about minimizing casualties or choosing non-lethal options. We do, all of those things. What do you want the galaxy to know about Special Forces? Monroe thought for a moment before answering. We're not monsters. We're not invincible. We're just people who train harder than most, prepare more thoroughly than most, and accept missions that most people wouldn't. We do this so others don't have to. We operate in shadows so others can live in light. That's the purpose. That's the point. The interview ended with words that would be quoted across the galaxy for years to come. What would you say to someone who fears you? Lixara asked. Monroe's answer was simple. If you're protecting innocents, you have nothing to fear from us. If you're threatening them, then yes, you should be afraid. Because we will come, we will find you. And we will stop you. Not because we enjoy it, but because it's what we trained our entire lives to do. 6 months passed after Sigma 7. The galaxy had changed in ways both obvious and subtle. Pirate activity near human space decreased by 40%. Terrorist organizations became more cautious about their targets. Several hostage situations were resolved when authorities simply mentioned the possibility of calling in human special forces. Commander Monroe and his team had completed 4 more missions during those 6 months. Each one was successful. Each one reinforced the reputation that Sigma 7 had built. The galaxy was learning a simple truth. When humans sent their special forces, the mission would succeed. But on a quiet Tuesday morning, Monroe received a message that made his blood run cold. A human colony near the frontier was under attack. The colony was called Haven's Rest. It was special for a reason that most people didn't know. Haven's Rest was where they sent families. When Special Forces operators died in action, their families were offered a choice. They could stay on Earth, or they could move to Haven's Rest, where they would be among others who understood their loss. The colony had started small, just a few dozen families. Now it housed nearly 500 people. Children who had lost parents, spouses who had lost partners, parents who had lost sons and daughters. Monroe's own sister lived there with her 2 children. Her husband had been a Special Forces operator who died on a mission 3 years ago. Monroe had promised to look after them. He had promised they would be safe. Now, a pirate fleet of 20 ships was attacking the colony. Monroe read the report with his team gathered around him. Ryan's face was tight with anger. Nicole's hands clenched into fists. Brandon's jaw worked silently. Megan's eyes were cold. Kevin stared at the data with an expression that promised violence. They hit the defense platforms first, Monroe said, his voice unnaturally calm. Colony defenses are down. The pirates are demanding surrender and cargo. They don't know what this colony is. They don't know who lives there. They're about to find out, Ryan said quietly. Monroe contacted Ambassador Crawford immediately. She answered within seconds, having already heard the news. Request immediate deployment authorization, Monroe said without preamble. My team. Full equipment. No restrictions. Lisa understood what he wasn't saying. This wasn't a hostage rescue. This wasn't a precision operation. This was personal. This was about protection. This was about sending a message that would echo across the galaxy. Authorized, she said simply. Monroe. Be careful. No promises. He replied, and ended the call. The team's ship left within 15 minutes. They traveled fast, pushing the engines harder than recommended. The trip that should have taken 8 hours took 5. Every minute felt like an eternity. Every second was another moment that the families at Haven's Rest were in danger. When they arrived in the system, they saw the pirate fleet surrounding the colony. 20 ships against 1 undefended settlement. The pirates thought they had won easily. They thought this would be a simple raid. Monroe opened a channel to the pirate flagship. His voice was different from the calm tone he usually used. This voice carried promise of absolute certainty. This is Commander Jack Monroe, of Earth's Special Forces. You have attacked a human colony. You have threatened families under our protection. You have 30 seconds to withdraw your fleet and leave this system. If you're still here in 31 seconds, what happens next is on you. The pirate captain laughed. His species was known for their cruelty and their love of combat. 1 small ship against 20 of ours? You're brave. Human, brave and stupid. We'll destroy your ship, and then we'll take what we want from the colony. 29 seconds, Monroe said. The pirate captain cut the transmission. Monroe looked at his team. No words were needed. They had trained together for years. They knew what came next. Kevin, you're with me on the flagship. Ryan, take their weapons platform on Ship 3. Nicole, kill their communications network. Megan, disable their command ship's engines. Brandon, protect the colony's evacuation shelters. If any pirate gets through us, you're the last line. Brandon nodded and headed for the shuttle that would take him to the colony surface. The rest of the team prepared for boarding actions. 10 seconds. Monroe counted down calmly. They waited. The pirate fleet didn't move. They didn't believe a single small ship could threaten them. They didn't understand what they were facing. 0. Monroe's ship moved with speed that surprised the pirates. It darted between their vessels, too fast for their weapons to track. Small boarding pods launched from hidden bays, attaching to pirate ships with magnetic clamps. Each pod carried 1 or 2 human operators. The pirates realized too late that they weren't fighting a ship battle. They were fighting something far more dangerous. Monroe and Kevin breached the flagship through a docking port that the pirates had foolishly left unsecured. They entered the ship wearing gear that made them look like nightmares. Full tactical armor, weapons that the galaxy had never seen, and expressions that promised no mercy. The first group of pirates that tried to stop them lasted less than 10 seconds. Monroe moved through them like a storm, not stopping, not slowing. Kevin covered his 6 with precision that left no opening for counterattack. Ryan reached the weapons platform on Ship 3 and found it heavily guarded. Good. He was in the mood for a challenge. He planted charges on the exterior hull, while hanging by one hand in 0 gravity. When the pirates realized something was wrong and sent guards to investigate, Ryan was already inside their ship. The explosions he set off were perfectly calculated. They destroyed weapon systems but left life support intact. The pirates aboard Ship 3 found themselves floating in a dead vessel. Weapons useless, but alive. Ryan's voice came over their communications. "You threaten children. Remember that when you wonder why we're not killing you." "We could. We're choosing not to." Nicole infiltrated the communications hub on Ship 7. She worked with speed that came from years of practice, dismantling their ability to coordinate. One by one, pirate vessels went silent, unable to talk to each other, unable to organize a response. Nicole watched the chaos through their systems and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Megan positioned herself in space between the colony and the pirate command ship. When that ship tried to fire on the colony, she fired first. Her shot was perfect, traveling across 3 kilometers of space to strike the engine assembly. The command ship went dark, drifting without power. The pirate captain aboard the flagship realized his mistake when Monroe kicked open the bridge door. He saw the human operator standing there, weapon ready, face showing no emotion whatsoever. "You had 30 seconds to leave," Monroe said. "You chose wrong." The captain tried to raise his weapon. Monroe was faster. The shot wasn't lethal, but it put the captain on the floor. Monroe crossed the bridge in 3 steps and stood over him. "My sister lives in that colony," Monroe said quietly. "Her children, her friends, families of people I served with. You thought you could threaten them and walk away. You were wrong." He activated his communications link to all pirate ships simultaneously. "This is Commander Monroe. Your flagship is captured. Your communications are down. Your weapons are offline. Your engines are disabled. You have 2 choices. Surrender now, or we continue this. Your choice." The pirates knew they were beaten. Ship by ship, they signaled surrender. Within 40 minutes, all 20 vessels had given up. The entire pirate fleet, defeated by 6 human operators. Monroe left Kevin to secure the flagship and headed to the colony surface. He found Brandon at the main shelter, standing guard over families who had gathered there when the attack began. Brandon gave him a brief nod. "No pirates made it through. Colony is secure. Everyone's safe." Monroe entered the shelter and found his sister immediately. She ran to him, and he held her while his niece and nephew clung to his legs. "We're okay," his sister said. "We knew you'd come. We told everyone. We told them Uncle Jack would come." Monroe knelt down so he could look at the children. "You're safe now, all of you. I promised I'd protect you. I keep my promises." Later, after the galactic military arrived to take custody of the pirates, after the colony was secured, after families were assured that the danger had passed, Monroe stood at the colony's memorial wall. It was a simple structure, listing the names of every Special Forces operator who had died in service. His team joined him there, standing in silence. They had all lost friends whose names were on that wall. They had all made the same promise Monroe made: to protect those left behind. Ryan finally spoke. They picked the wrong colony. Yeah, Monroe agreed. They did. News of Haven's Rest spread even faster than the story of Sigma 7. This time, the galaxy heard a different message. They heard about operators who became something else when you threatened what they loved. They heard about a team that disabled 20 ships in under an hour. They heard about precision replaced with fury, but fury that still chose to spare lives when possible. Ambassador Crawford was called before the Galactic Council to explain. She stood before them without apology. You asked what would happen if our special forces were used offensively, she said. Now you know. They destroyed a pirate fleet that threatened innocents. They did it quickly. They did it efficiently. And they still took prisoners instead of bodies. That's the difference between weapons and warriors. Warriors have judgment. Warriors have purpose. Warriors have lines they won't cross. Vexthor nodded slowly. The pirates are spreading stories already. They say the human operators moved like ghosts. They say resistance was useless. They say surrendering was the only way to survive. Good, Lisa said simply. Let them spread those stories. Let every pirate, every terrorist, every person who thinks about threatening innocents, hear those stories. Let them know that if they touch human families, they'll meet our shadows. And those shadows show no mercy to those who deserve none. Admiral Krenval added his perspective. In 6 months, human special forces have changed the security situation in 3 sectors. Hostile activity is down. Cooperation with authorities is up, all because potential criminals fear encountering these operators. Fear is a tool, Lisa acknowledged, but it's not the goal. The goal is protection. The goal is justice. The goal is ensuring that families can live in peace without worrying about pirates or terrorists or anyone else who would do them harm. Monroe and his team returned to Earth for the first time in a year. They needed rest. They needed time to process what they'd done. They needed to remember why they did this job. Before leaving, Monroe recorded a message. It was broadcast across every human channel and translated into galactic languages. His face was shown clearly this time. Let them see who he was. Let them understand. My name is Commander Jack Monroe, he said to the camera. I lead a special forces team. We train to go where others can't. We do what others won't. We carry burdens others shouldn't have to. We're not monsters. We're not invincible. We're just humans who chose to stand between danger and the people who need protecting. He paused, then continued. If you threaten innocents, if you attack families, if you think you can hurt people just because you're stronger or better armed, then yes, you should fear us. Because we will come. We will find you, and we will stop you. Not because we want to, because we have to. We're shadows that you pray never to meet. But we're also the reason that children sleep safely. The reason families can live without fear. The reason that justice still means something in a galaxy that sometimes forgets. We're special forces, and we're always watching. The message ended. Across the galaxy, people heard it differently. Some heard a threat, some heard a promise, some heard a comfort, but everyone understood. Humanity had warriors who lived in shadows. Warriors who trained their entire lives for impossible missions. Warriors who would cross the galaxy to protect innocents. The galaxy called them special forces. But they called themselves something simpler. Protectors. And that's exactly what they were.